Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about how I prepared for my first sprint triathlon in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Just a quick intro, I'm in my mid-50s, an active biker and runner. I never really swam before this, seriously, and someone at the gym suggested it was a good introductory triathlon because Atlantic City is pretty flat, and it's a good idea to have a goal to train for, try to lose a few pounds I picked up during the quarantine. So I started training 6 months before, as soon as the pre-registration went on sale. As I said, I'd always been a runner, running about 15 miles a week, and I was a pretty avid mountain biker, but I didn't have a road bike, and I never biked in winter months. So starting in February, I began biking about 30 minutes 3 times a week on the stationary bike. I bought a cheap road bike on Craigslist. Although I did see some people with bikes that were several $1,000s, and I saw a few folks using hybrid bikes and one person even using a beach cruiser. Of course, your time will be a bit slower on a hybrid and probably a lot slower on a beach cruiser. But if you don't have money to spend on a road bike, you can probably use most any bike you have, as far as I know, although you can check with the organization with specific questions if you should have them, so you don't show up with an illegal bike. Additionally, the biggest obstacle in the swimming for me was learning how to freestyle. I knew how to not drown, but I wasn't a very strong swimmer. I watched YouTube to learn some freestyle basics. For me, it was really about developing a breathing rhythm. There are various techniques and styles, but what worked for me was developing a 1-2 breathe, 1-2 breathe. So it was basically alternate side breathing. Once I got that rhythm down in the pool, I worked on doing laps. Our pool that we have at our gym is 50 meters per lap, so at first I could only do half of that without stopping because I didn't have the breathing down. But once I got the hang of that rhythm and it became natural, I focused on staying in that rhythm, keeping a tight core, head level, not letting my legs slide, and keeping my ankles loose. Now the swim is the first event in the triathlon. It goes swim, bike, run. So I tried to do the bulk of the work of swimming with my arms. Of course, I still kicked with the legs, but I tried not to get too crazy because you don't want your legs to be anchors slowing you down, but you don't want your legs to get tired either. For equipment, it was pretty simple. Silicone swim cap, goggles, and these types of earplugs. Me personally, I don't like water going unabated into my ear. So I think these things help prevent swimmer's ear. Maybe not, but if you're going to be spending a lot of time in the pool, then you want to do anything you can to prevent that. I worked up to doing about 800 meters nonstop in the pool because I figured if I can do 800 meters in a pool without too much effort, I should be able to do the 400 meters in the bay in Atlantic City. I never did bother to master the flip that swimmers often do to turn around in the pool. I just tagged the wall of the pool and went in the other direction, and I found that was good enough for my purposes. So as the weather got warmer, I stopped stationary biking and started biking outside. Much more preference to mountain biking, so I actually did a majority of my initial bike training on the mountain bike to get the legs strong, and later I switched to the road bike as it got closer to race time. Now there are 2 things I recommend you try at least once before you do your first triathlon in Atlantic City. The first one is an open water swim. Now I recommend you do an organized swim so you have some lifeguard protection. I used the Wild Harbor Tri Club, which was great. I'll put a link to them in the description. You can join it, or for a small fee, you can participate in their events as a walk-up. And that's what I did. So I was able to get in a swim. Now the Atlantic City Sprint Triathlon swim is about 400 meters. So I did a open swim event they had in Stone Harbor with the Wild Harbor Tri Club, and it is a 400 meter course. And you can do as many loops as you want to in an hour. So I did 2 loops because I knew if I could do 800 meters at Stone Harbor, it should be fine to swim 400 meters in Atlantic City. Now, one thing about bay swimming, of course, you can't see that much in the bay like you can in a pool. So instead of doing a standard kind of side to side turn like you might in a pool, every couple of strokes I kind of lift my head up and look forward briefly so you can see where you're going. You'll need to look for the buoys and try not to tailgate other swimmers, as you don't want to get kicked in the face. And again, try not to kick too furiously, as you'll need your good legs for the bike and the run portions. The second thing you should try at least once is the transition from bike to run, sometimes referred to as bricking. Again, the Atlantic City Sprint Triathlon is a 400-meter swim, 11-mile bike ride, and a 5K run. So for my brick practice, I used my road bike, and I also purchased tri-shorts. Tri-shorts are like bike shorts, but with a little less padding than traditional bike shorts, so they can function pretty well as a bathing suit as well as running shorts. So I wore the tri-shorts, biked at a decent clip, about 15 miles an hour for about 6 miles. Then I quickly set the bike down and ran 2 miles. I learned a few things by doing that. One was that the tri-shorts were doing some chafing on my legs. And the other thing I learned was that my legs did really feel kind of brickish as I started to run. They kind of felt heavy. So I tried it another time, and this time, to address the chafing, I used like a different underwear that had longer leg portion, and that fixed the chafing issue. The other thing I did was I slowed down a little bit on the bike the last half mile. I even did a little bit of coasting, just slowed down a little bit. And while that probably increased the bike time a little, it gave my legs a chance to rest, and then when I switched to the run, I found it much easier. And this story I just told you, I think highlights that it's important to try at least once doing the activities, wearing the gear you plan to wear the day of the race. Wear the shorts, wear the goggles, wear the shirts that you plan to use. Make sure it's comfortable. Your goggles don't leak. If your goggles tend to fog up, invest in some anti-fog spray for a few bucks. With the race being in the early morning, the sun is at a low angle, and that can make it difficult to see. And if your goggles are foggy, finding the buoys can be even harder. So you want to make sure you try all the gear at least once prior to race day. So as the summer arrived, I continued my training. My regimen included 3 to 4 800-meter swims per week, 4 to 5 bike rides per week, ranging from 8 to 10 miles. Although I did one 26-mile ride just to, test the endurance. For the running, I did the majority of the running of a 5K on the treadmill at a speed of 7 miles an hour. My goal was to try to keep a pace of about 6 miles per hour on the ground, so I found that setting a treadmill to 7 miles per hour was about the equivalent of 6 miles per hour on the real ground. I know a lot of runners hate treadmills, but I like them because, one, they have more give than the streets, so they're easier on your joints for an old dude like me. And then number 2, they force you to lock in a steady cadence, and that really helped me develop a steady run pace. So the week before the race, I did all my normal workouts up to Wednesday, the Wednesday before the race. Remember, the race is on a Sunday. So that Wednesday was my last full run. Then for Thursday and Friday, I did light bike and swim workouts, and Saturday, just a light 5-mile bike ride at a moderate pace just to get loose. Also on the Wednesday before the race, about 4 days prior, I started some minor carb loading. Not too crazy, but increasing carb intake over normal diet. Since this race is around 2 hours or so, it may not be critical to carb load, but I did increase the carbs leading up to the race, and I found it was helpful because I didn't hit the wall, as they say. The day before the race, I made sure to hydrate well. I drank extra water, but I ate relatively light. A little bit of fruit and some toast, some bananas. I wanted to wake up feeling slightly hungry on race day, not full from the day before. So there was no sluggishness from being full or any other digestive issues that you don't want to have during a race. The other thing I started doing, starting from the week before the race, was gradually get up earlier. The race starts at 6:30, and I wanted to check in by around 5 a.m., and I live an hour away from Atlantic City, so that meant I had to be on my way at 4 a.m., so The week leading up to the race, I gradually set my alarm a half hour earlier or 20 minutes earlier each day till I was getting up at around 4. That way, the day of the race, it wasn't so hard to wake up, around 3:45 in the morning to get going. So I hope you found this video helpful, and thanks for watching. Now in another video, I'll share details about the race itself, and a link for that video is in the description.